This meeting is now being recorded.
So I think we're ready to get going. I apologize for all of the commotion outside. Half of us are moving today. It was supposed to start at noon. It started about 6 a.m. So bear with us, and most importantly, as you're going out, either use the restrooms or leaving later on after this is over, please try to be safe, and I hope that no one gets run over by a hand cart or something. That's my biggest worry. Anyway, I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the third meeting of the Governor's Water Augmentation Council. I think we all know that Governor Ducey has given us the task of investigating long-term water augmentation strategies, additional water conservation opportunities, and funding infrastructure needs to help secure water supplies for Arizona's future. I think before we get started, I think we do have an elected official with us here today, Representative Otondo. Would you like to make any opening statement or make any comments before we start?
First of all, I'd just like to say it's a pleasure being here, and thank you very much. And it's wonderful to see Yuma represented at the table. That's the area I represent, Legislative District 4, which is extremely large. Also to all of you who I've been calling for my water management project from the Agribusiness Council, I'd just like to say thank you, and I look forward to listening to what you have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. I think I want to give an opportunity for folks on the telephone to introduce themselves. Do we have anyone on the phone, members of the council?
This is David Brown.
Hi, David. Anyone else? Okay, hearing none, maybe very quickly go around the room for the members of the council sitting at the table. Hunter, can we start with you?
Good morning. Hunter Moore, Governor's Office. Warren Tenney, Arizona Municipal Water Users Association.
Sarah Porter, Kyle Center for Water Policy.
Chrissy Dahl, Agribusiness and Water Council of Arizona.
Wade Noble, Yuma County Agricultural Water Coalition.
Virginia O'Connell, Arizona Water Bank. Sandy Favorites Whitney, Freeport.
John Kamik, Southern Arizona Water Users Association.
Cheryl Lombard, Valley Partnership.
Dave Roberts with Salt River Project.
Maureen George, Mojave County Water Authority.
Lisa Atkins, State Land Department.
Bob Lotz with the Arizona Public Service Company.
Rick Labus, Arizona Cotton Growers.
Ted Cook, Central Arizona Project.
Pat Graham, the Nature Conservancy.
Tom Bushotsky, DWR.
Jerry Walker, ADWR.
Martin Stiles, ADWR staff.
Okay, thanks. So we have our agenda. Hopefully everyone has a copy of the agenda. I think we're done with our welcome and opening remarks. We're going to flip the agenda around a little bit. So the focus of today's meeting will be the final review of the Council's annual report that's due to the Governor by July 1st. In our second meeting in May, the Council discussed several changes to the recommendation section of the report, as well as some other changes to the timeline, which is now found in Appendix 4. The most current version of the report reflects that conservation, and our primary goal for today is to reach consensus on approval of the report so that it can be transmitted to the Governor's office. I think we're going to review the report in its entirety. One of the topics of the discussion will also be what we're going to do in the next calendar year for the next reporting period. And I think it makes more sense for us to discuss that first. And that actually is agenda item number 3, but we're going to move that up to agenda item number 2. I think in that regard, I'm going to turn it over to Martin to go through those topics potential topics for next year. And again, this reflects what we heard at the last meeting. One maybe change from our discussion at the last meeting is the order in which these potential items exist on the screen, and in the draft report, our DWR's assessment of what the priority should be. reality, I think once we all are in agreement with this list and hopefully in agreement with the priority, we will leave for the first meeting next year a discussion of which of the items we want to actually start getting into and how many of the items we can do simultaneously. So with that, Martin, take it away.
So this document has the 5 items found in the recommendation section from the annual report. We've just pulled this out to prioritize what we'll be discussing over the fiscal year 2016 to 2017. So the first item is development of a communication plan for the state to accurately convey the status of its water supply resiliency and its efforts to maintain that status moving forward. Secondly, let me just interrupt myself and say that the order found here can be prioritized as the council sees fit. But the second item we have listed here is the potential for augmentation through reuse, reclaimed, and poor quality water to significantly reduce the future demand and supply imbalance. Thirdly, funding for augmentation infrastructure. Fourth, the potential for augmenting groundwater supplies through natural recharge and conservation to include possible incentives and infrastructure needs. And 5, identification of large-scale augmentation opportunities. Are there any comments from the council on these items?
Is everyone in agreement that these items accurately reflect our discussion from the last meeting? And does anyone have issue at this point in time with this general priority that we've laid out? John.
Director Bashowski. On number 2, does that include remediated groundwaters?
And I think the tenor of the discussion last time was that the poor quality water was to include remediated groundwater as well.
And just another question on number 4, potential for augmenting groundwater supplies through natural recharge. Are we excluding constructed recharge?
No, we're not.
Okay, thank you.
John, do you think we need to explicitly say through other than natural recharge, or through, I don't know what the words would be, through underground storage and natural recharge? Folks okay with adding that in? Make that clear?
Or through natural recharge and constructed recharge.
Okay.
Tom.
Dave.
It seems to me natural recharge is natural recharge. Shouldn't we talk about through enhancing natural recharge or doing things to enhance natural recharge?
I think that was the point of this wording. Not to disagree, we should continue to do research. We're not doing enough of things.
So I agree. I think the point was to enhancing the natural recharge that's already occurring. So I would add that word as well.
Tom, I also have a question on number 2.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't know really how the word reuse is used in there. It seems to me that it's through the reuse of reclaimed and poor quality water too significantly. I'm not sure reuse. Maybe you can explain a little bit more about what reuse is just by itself there.
So I would just give one example off the top of my head. Dave, probably along the lines of what's going on at Palo Verde, reusing that water over and over again. I don't know how many, you said 26 times, Bob? Good memory. So maybe there's some opportunities to do that, reuse the water multiple times before it actually gets...
I think we were talking about, to word it better, through reuse and the utilization of reclaimed water and the use of poor quality groundwater. That is kind of the way I had looked at it. It just is that's a better sentence structure than.
So you want to add after the word reuse and the utilization of?
Yeah, I think that, not to sit and wordsmith all day again, but.
That's okay. These are good clarifications. Any other comments about the original language or the changes we made by anyone? Again, or the prioritization? Maureen?
Yeah, I guess I don't recall that we had a great discussion on the prioritization, and if the idea is that we're going to figure that out next time, then I'm fine with this list, because it seems to me there are some of those that we could be doing at the same time.
And I think we specifically did not talk prioritization last time. We thought we might take a stab at it. But, again, we did have a conversation at the first and last meeting about the ability potentially to work through multiple issues at the same time. And I think in that vein, if this is okay, we'll work on that at the next meeting. Okay. Any other comments? David, you catching this on the phone?
I am. Thank you.
Okay,
very
thanks.
well.
Just want to make sure. We had trouble last time with some call-in issues, so just trying to make sure you're still there.
No, it's loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay, so can we move on from this? Looks like we're ready to do that. So we'll go now to review of the report language. And I think we're going to show the changes that have been made. I think most of this was sent out to everyone ahead of time. There might be one addition that came in late that we will discuss with all of you. So, Martin, again, want to go through this?
So the red language you see on the screen is a reorganized and slightly reformatted version of the recommendation section that we agreed on at the last meeting. The content is not changed, but the order of the way that we laid out the recommendation section is slightly different. Before I ask for feedback from the council members, I do want to point out that on the screen you'll see item number 3 under the general tenets of the GWAC. This is not found in your printed version because this is something that was recently submitted to us from Mr. Dave Roberts, and so when we get to item number 3, I'll ask Mr. Roberts to speak to that point. But first, let's just start with number 1 and make sure if anyone has any comments about number 1, then 2, and then we will go sequentially through this. So I will turn it over to any council members who wish to speak.
Tom, does Dave Brown know about number 3 there? Does he have that? David, do you have that?
I can see the screen.
That's good. Got good eyes.
Exactly.
So no changes to 1 or 2. If that is good, then let's move on to number 3. If Mr. Roberts would like to speak to this, that would be great. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Martin. One of the things that I want to make sure we don't lose sight of, and it's been a long-standing part of Arizona's history in terms of water, has been that when we've had opportunities to augment water supplies in a region, we've done so as a way to help resolve conflicts over water. And there are many examples of this. For example, for our Salt River project itself, before the federal government wanted to invest in the project to start construction of Roosevelt Dam, they asked the landowners in the Salt River Valley to resolve their conflicts over water to the natural and normal flow of the Salt and Verde River water before they were going to invest in developing stored water. And there are other examples of like that. In fact, the Groundwater Management Act to resolve the conflicts over pumping of groundwater in order for us to get full funding of the Central Arizona project. So I put this in here if this is not the only reason why we do augmentation. I mean, obviously for economic development and investment in infrastructure and other types of things, but I want to make sure that we don't lose sight of the fact, and I think it's important that as part of any augmentation scheme that we provide certainty to those water users that exist in that area as well as those who are going to invest, including the state, local folks, and the United States, for the certainty of their investment that we resolve those conflicts over water. It doesn't mean, and there are those things going on in the general stream adjudication. It doesn't have to be a decree necessarily relative to the adjudication, but it can be a settlement among the water users in terms of the water rights in that region. So that's the nature of what I'm trying to sort of capture here in this.
So, Dave, I guess I'll ask one question, and that is, absent an ability to have the water resource conflicts resolved, or is this meaning that we would not pursue an augmentation opportunity in that geographic area?
Well, and I had a conversation with Dave Brown about this. That's why I want to make sure he sees this. He doesn't want it to be, and Dave, please speak up, he doesn't want it to be sort of totally focused in on resolving the conflicts, because he gave me an example of the Heber-Overgaard area that has a water supply problem and would like to have their water supply augmented, and they might go to some other place within the basin to get water supplies to help augment their situation, and he doesn't want to have to resolve all of the little Colorado River water rights associated with that little augmentation. And I told him that's not the intent of this, but in terms of a large-scale project where you're going to bring in water into a large area, that you don't want to resolve those conflicts. So that's sort of the intent when we're going to be looking at these larger scale projects, and I think part of our calendar year 17 or next year's projects will be looking at those long-term or large-scale augmentation opportunities. I can let Dave, you can speak on this as well.
Mr. Chair, this is David Brown. Without going into a lot of detail, and I discussed it with Dave this morning, I understand the concept. I have a good grip on what it means to resolve the conflict, having done, so with a lot of Indian water settlements. But I just gave him one example. I have several examples of augmentation projects that don't have anything to do with adjudication and are in areas where, in fact, there is no adjudication. And so I just don't think we want to preload the discussion with one factor among many factors that go into what will be all the factors involved in an augmentation opportunity and the resulting augmentation possible recommendations that this council comes up with. And so I just don't think it's appropriate at this point in time to saddle the discussion with one of the factors that goes into the discussion when above in paragraph 4, I don't see it now on the screen, but whatever paragraph 4 was, when it says, let me flip to my copy, it says basically that whatever the fourth one was, identify augmentation opportunities. And that includes all the factors that go into augmentation. So I really don't think we need this paragraph at this point in time.
Thoughts by others, or Dave, do you want to respond before thoughts by other council members?
Mr. Chairman, this is Bass.
Well, hi, Bass. Hold on a second. Dave was going to respond, I think, to David, and then we'll give you an opportunity to speak. Thanks for joining us.
Well, I understand exactly what Dave's talking about. I mean, for example, if we get into a weather modification program and we're trying to enhance rainfall and natural recharge, we shouldn't sort of have that as, in order to invest in that, you have to resolve all the water rights. So I understand what he's talking about, that there are many other things that don't sort of relate to the water rights issues. And maybe, another way of doing this is to make sure to capture this concept, not so much in the recommendations or maybe the general tenets, but maybe just in the body of the report. But it's many factors that need to be looked at augmenting a region's water supply, is to look at opportunities to solve those conflicts over water.
before, I think Bass was up next. So Bass, are you able to see the language on the screen that SRP proposed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then?
Yes. So, my comment, Mr. Chairman, is that, if you look at augmentation, I think that we'll be looking at it as, doing some of that will be in the form of current needs. Some of that will be in the form of future demand. Some of that might be in the form of some portion might have some conflict resolution part to it. But the way this is drafted, it's pretty limited to conflict resolution. And I don't want us to forego the opportunity for augmentation on current needs or possible future demands while we're looking at augmentation.
Thanks, Bass. Other comments from members of the council? Ted was next, I think. Ted Cook.
My first thought when I read this, even though I get Dave's point, it is kind of detailed to appear in the general tenant, but maybe to capture this thought, there is a way to include that in the other five. So I'll keep pushing this up so it goes on to the same day.
Looks like it's working.
Thank you. Patrick's going to share. The thought was it is kind of detailed to appear in a general tenant, but maybe to capture this idea of including, among the many things we do in identifying opportunities is as a tool to resolve water rights conflicts. And can we include that in the five? Not add a sixth, but maybe include that by just a parenthetical, including where existing water rights conflicts exist. Something like that. Rather than just removing the whole thing.
Hold that thought. And Sandy?
I was just going to suggest that you sort of, in the front of that, is as a means to, among other things, put it that way. And you could put in there resolve or improve water supply availability and resolve conflicts related to the general stream adjudication. That way you just make it a little more general, so it's not so restrictive in there. I don't mind it being in the general tenants. I think it is a general tenant of, at least augmentation itself is a general tenant of the advisory council, but you could maybe, Dave, if you're okay, soften that with other examples.
I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I have been working in this area for many, many years, and so it sort of jumps out at me as an opportunity to sort of focus in on that, because I think it also adds incentive to bring in others to help fund augmentation. So,
Mr. Chairman, this is David. I don't have a problem with discussing resolving water conflicts. What I have a problem with is specifically pointing to those that are in the general stream adjudication. The report already goes to some length on page 8 or whatever it is under the strategic vision to note the importance of resolving the adjudication. I think that's clear. That's in everybody's interest. I just don't think that should be one of the general tenets. If we want to say other factors, including but not limited to resolving conflicts, and throw out some other factors, I think that serves us much better.
So, Dave, I think proposal, you were breaking up, so maybe you could repeat the language.
Great. I can't remember what I said.
I'm with you. Short-term memory is first to go.
I basically tried to say that to delete the reference to adjudication, there's already plenty of reference to that in the report, and suggest, like Sandy did, but without a reference to the general stream adjudication, that among other things, resolving conflict should be considered.
Okay, thanks. And I've got my staff next to me trying to work on some language, but while that's going on, I think Warren Kennedy wanted to comment.
Yeah, I was just going to add that I think somewhere, whether it be in the tenant or into the 5 recommendations, some type of acknowledgement of trying to work on resolving these water conflicts. There certainly is a link to augmentation, that when these conflicts are resolved, it provides greater certainty as far as what the water resource is that could possibly be then augmented. And so I'd like to try to see it somewhere in there. Also, in part because it was such a high point, or it was emphasized in the strategic vision. So it seems like there should be some acknowledgement that we would like to see some movement forward on resolving water resource conflicts.
Anyone else want to comment? So, Sandy, did you have additional language besides the cross out there? The
No, I
deletion?
was just suggesting, among other things, as a means to improve water supply availability, resolve water resource conflicts, whatever else.
Can you say that again?
Yeah, and identify augmentation opportunities, such as, or among others, or how about such as? Oh wait, it's not working. Yeah, we could do that. Among other things, identify augmentation opportunities as a means to resolve water resource conflicts and improve water supply availability to ensure legal certainty. That works.
Do it in a different color. Bear with us while we try to capture that thought.
Sandy, I thought you were kind of saying not where the identify augmentation opportunities as a means to resolve water resource conflicts and improve water supply availability, and then I thought you were going for language something like including but not exclusively the general stream adjudication and other conflicts or something like that. No? Okay.
But do we not need to ensure legal certainty for water users and just stop there?
No, I think I'm okay with what's there. So if people have a chance to see the changes up on the screen, it now reads, among other things, identify augmentation opportunities as a means to resolve water resource conflicts and improve water supply availability to ensure legal certainty for water users and investors before investment in augmentation opportunities occur.
Mr. Chairman, Mrs. Bass, I still think that language is too limiting.
Bess, how about if we struck the last clause before investment in augmentation opportunities occur, just put a period after investors? Does that help, Bess?
Would you read it again then without that?
And so I'll read it with that last deletion. It will say, among other things, identify augmentation opportunities as a means to resolve water resource conflicts and improve water supply availability to ensure legal certainty for water users and investors.
What can we use or improve water supply availability? So the way it's written there now, that if the augmentation project doesn't resolve a conflict and provide additional water availability, we're not going to look at it because it's an and.
Yes, we can change that to or, and folks were shaking their head around the table when you asked that.
Shaking my head like no, like yes, like...
Shaking them yes. Of course.
Oh, okay.
Always in agreement with you.
Okay.
So I'll read that one more time. Among other things, identify augmentation opportunities as a means to resolve water resource conflicts or improve water supply availability to ensure legal certainty for water users and investors. Any more comments? Bass or David, anyone in the room on the council? Going once, twice. We will adopt that language and include it in the report. Thank you all.
All right, let's move into the next section of the recommendations, which we went over in the topics for the next year. And unless anyone has anything to say about that, we'll go on to the next item, which is the recommendations regarding actions to be taken by ADWR.
Martin, I think number 2 needs to change to the language that we had modified in the other section.
Yes, thank you. And I forgot to note that, but all of the changes we made on the topics of focus in our discussion a few minutes ago, I will incorporate that into each time we use that topic. So I will change that. Does anyone have any comments on the recommendations regarding actions to be taken by ADWR?
Mr. Chairman, I think on number 3, and Warren, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, I thought that the language that you had talked about was outside it or inside the AMAs on the number 3 there. Identify municipal and private water providers, and right now it just says outside the AMAs. I thought you had mentioned inside or outside.
Yeah, there was a reference to inside, even though knowing that's really doesn't involve many, but.
So I think, Bob, the reason that the inside's not there is that we have kind of a regulatory role to already do that.
Right.
And we're going to perform that role, obviously, whether or not this council ever existed in the first place. So I think it's redundant. We have that process that we go through to do that. And I don't want there to be any confusion in terms of what we're required to do under the law right now and under the management plans.
I'm good with that. It was just the one thing I remembered from last meeting, so I thought I'd bring it up.
Okay.
All right. So
other than that, 1 through 3, any other concerns or comments?
So I will quickly go through some other changes that have been added to the document you have in front of you. On page 13, there is a short paragraph added on the water success history section. It reads, other landmarks in the story of Arizona's water success were the formations of the Salt River Project in 1903, the Central Arizona Project in 1946, and the establishment of the Arizona Water Banking Authority in 1996. These important entities, along with the statutory framework provided by the Groundwater Management Act, have helped to provide water certainty for Arizonans. And the idea for this paragraph came from a number of council members who were concerned about there not being a specific reference to the SRP, the CAP, and the Water Banking Authority in the water history section, and that's why we added this paragraph. Are there any suggested changes to this? All right, we will accept it as is. The next change is on page 14. We have incorporated the meeting summary from the May 13th meeting. It's a brief summary of that meeting. And then on page 15, there is just a single sentence that will be describing today's meeting, and we have added a brief conclusion that will be updated with the May 13th and June 10th meetings. All right, those are all the changes that we have. I do want to give Chris Udall a chance to mention something he wanted to add to the Water Users Association page in the appendix number 5, I believe. And we do not have this language in the document yet. So, Chris.
Can you bring up the appendix?
I don't have the language with me, but it was an email that I had sent to you earlier. It was our understanding that Warren Kenney had added language in there on some associations, AMWA and AMWA, SAWA, and we had a paragraph that where we wanted to include the Agribusiness Council, as it was known in 1978. It was established to respond to proposed legislation, which was the Groundwater Management Act, and that was the reason we were established. And so it was basically a paragraph to include us as an association in that appendix. There's no objection.
Okay, do any council members have a concern about adding that description of the Agribusiness and now Water Council into the appendix? Seeing none, we will make that change.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any other potential additions, comments, concerns about any specific part of the report that we haven't already covered?
Yes. Mr. Noble.
Yes, Wade, looking around, recognizing the voice but can't see.
On page 31, line 40. We would like to strike the words up to, as in, Dave Brown, what are you up to?
For the record, 1954 was my date of birth.
So you're up to several years later. It would then read, the Yuma Mesa Irrigation and Drainage District provides irrigation water for 20,000 acres. There's a long, complicated explanation as to why, but it just makes it more simple.
Thanks, Wade. Any other additions, comments? Members of the council, folks on the phone? Seeing none, I think we have completed our first annual report of the Governor's Water Augmentation Council. So thank you, everybody. A few closing announcements, and we're way ahead of schedule, thank goodness. But before I do that, actually, since we are ahead of schedule, is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the council at this time? If so, please go to the microphone. I'm not seeing anyone, so we have the agreement of the audience that our report is perfect. We will note that. We will note that the public believes this is perfect in the cover letter to the governor.
This is Sandy Barr, and I'm on the phone, so I guess I'm in the audience. But I just would like to say that, and I'm with the Sierra Club, I would just like to say that I think the Augmentation Council should look for better ways to engage the public in this process, because I think a lot of people feel pretty shut out, and I certainly do, and have had quite a lot of difficulty getting information, and there really was no opportunity for the public to comment on the report. So I think that it would be beneficial if you're looking for larger input and buy-in to consider that for the future.
Sandy, can I interrupt for a second?
I'm done. I'm not going to say anything more at this point.
I just wanted to interrupt you because we only heard about 1 out of every 5 words, and we didn't do it on purpose, so maybe you can repeat what you were saying.
Okay, so basically, I'm encouraging the Augmentation Council to find better ways to engage the public in this process. I think a lot of people feel shut out, and there's been no opportunity for public comment on this report document, and we see it in my case on the screen the day of, and it's not a very good public process. If indeed you're looking to have the public engaged, I think there are better ways to do that, and I would encourage you to look for those for the future.
We will have some internal discussions at DWR with staff about how to improve of that process, and I hope you'll bear with us in the fact that this first report period was way shorter than we had hoped originally, and that's driving some of the speed at which we need to move this through the process, and we can do better next time. So with that, I'll just let everyone know in conclusion that our next meeting will be August 5th, also a Friday, also at 10 a.m. at our location at 1110 West Washington Street, Suite 310, also known as the Natural Resources Building. Again, about half the department's moving there today, and about the rest of the other half through the rest of this week and next Friday. Again, all the staff email addresses and telephone numbers are supposed to be remaining the same. Hopefully that will all work out when we get to the new building. And so, again, thank you, everyone, for your participation, and we look forward to meeting up with you again on August 5th and getting into some more of the meat of the work of the council.
Mr. Chairman, this is David Brown. Is there a subsequent meeting set, or can there be a long-term meeting schedule set up so that it's easier to plan around?
We have not yet picked a meeting date after August 5th, but perhaps we will internally discuss that, look at availability for folks, and send an email out to the council with some future dates.
Perfect. Thank you.
Anything else? If I don't see any other hands raised, so I think we are adjourned. Thank you.